Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Davies, and this is Manir's Muse. I'm about to share the best conversation with you. Today, I'm talking with friend and fellow Vita ambassador, Alicia Wolf, in a two-part interview about her vestibular journey and publishing her first two cookbooks. Before we jump into this intimate conversation, let me tell you a little bit more about Alicia, also known to many as the Dizzy Cook. She's an author at Migraine Again, a trusted website and community for people with migraine and frequent headaches. She's an expert in vestibular migraine, migraine elimination diets. In addition to Migraine Again, Alicia has written for various publications, including The Dizzy Cook, Healthline, My Chronic Brain, Migraine Strong, and the Association of Migraine Disorders. Her first cookbook, The Dizzy Cook, Managing Migraine with more than 90 comforting recipes and lifestyle, has been a favorite among migraine sufferers, and she's currently working on her second cookbook. Again, this is part one of a two-part series. But before we get into it, I want to tell you thank you for your support and for listening today. We are so excited that you're here. Alicia, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was wondering if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into your story.
Yeah. So my name is Alicia Wolf. Some people know me as the Dizzy Cook. I basically was diagnosed with chronic vestibular migraine about 6 years ago. Actually, I think I've hit my 6-year anniversary, just past it. And I went from debilitating dizziness that just hit me all of a sudden. I was like a healthy 30-year-old. I had just gotten married. We were traveling, and I was trying to get promoted at my new job, or not my new job, but a job I had been with for a while, but I was trying to get a new promotion and working really hard, and had plans to get pregnant and all these things. And then this dizziness just kind of hit me out of nowhere. And for me, it started very slowly. It kind of built up. And I just remember one weekend I got sick, and then I just had this dizziness that wouldn't go away. And everyone kept telling me, oh, it's a cold, or here's some steroids. And so doctors kept throwing steroids at me, steroid courses, and no one could quite figure it out. And after several rounds of testing, several different doctors, I just got every different diagnosis you could imagine. From some people thought it was vestibular neuritis, but then they couldn't find, they had told me there was a weakness in my ear, but the testing I had gotten done was kind of a little shoddy. So I always doubted it, and couldn't find any hearing loss for me. And so everything kind of pretty much looked normal on the outside, but on the inside, I just had these feelings like I was walking on marshmallows, or like the ground was moving on me. I felt like I was falling or moving forward when I wasn't. One story that I tell all the time that stands out to me is I was driving coworkers to lunch, and I remember the car felt like as though it was moving forward, and it was terrifying to me. And I slammed on the brakes, and all my coworkers looked at me and they were like, what is going on? I'm like, did you guys feel that? And they were like, no, we've been in park this whole time. And so I kind of realized like there's something going on with my brain that no one seems to understand. And I saw some of the top neurologists in Dallas, like not in the middle of nowhere, I'm in Dallas. And they were just telling me it could be potential early MS, that most of what I got was that I was anxious and stressed, and I just needed to not stress, or I needed to not be anxious.
Yeah.
I think sadly that's put on a lot of women, especially women my age. And it was frustrating. And so I remember even my job didn't want to, since I didn't have a real diagnosis, they didn't want to allow me the time off. And so my boss at first was really understanding, but it got to the point where I couldn't drive anymore. And she was like, look, we need to tell HR.
Mm.
and get something figured out. So there's like FMLA and you have options. Well, when I went on FMLA, you have to have a reason for it, and your doctor kind of has to sign off on that. And so I didn't have a doctor that was willing to do that because they didn't have a diagnosis to give to my employer. And so it just created like this extra layer of stress where I felt like I was going to lose my job. And here I was trying to get promoted, and I worked so hard to get to this point.
Right.
I just felt like everything was slipping out of my hands. And I remember I reached out on Facebook one night and I just said, like, I am so dizzy. I'm like a shell of myself. I don't drive. I can hardly walk straight. I don't want to go outside. Like, I'm going to lose my job. I don't know why my husband would ever want to be with me anymore. Like, I need help. And we found a friend who knew a doctor at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. And so because one of the diagnoses that was thrown at me was parallel fistula, the vestibular therapist I was seeing, and here's what's crazy, I was seeing a vestibular therapist too, and he never once brought up migraine.
Wow.
But yeah, and they said, don't fly because we think you might have a parallel fistula. So this doctor was an expert in parallel fistula. And I went through 2 days of this amazing testing at the Mayo Clinic. I mean, like top of the line. And afterwards he walks in, he was like, "You have migraine." I said, "What? Like, there's no way. I don't get headaches." And I was one of those people who thought migraine was just a headache, a really bad headache. And he was like, "No, actually, like, migraine can come with all these different elements. Like, you have the light sensitivity and you have the, the dizziness and the vertigo and all of these things." And, he was like, I'm an ENT and it's not my specialty. So you really need to see a neurologist. And at the time I had been on this wait list to see the dizzy doctor in Dallas. And he was like this doctor that could diagnose any unexplained dizziness. So a lot of neurologists just sent people to him. And so it ended up being Dr. Bay, but I was on his wait list. He had like a 7-month wait list or something.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. So it was like, well, by that time I'm going to lose my job. So I was on his wait list. And what ended up happening was he was able to squeeze me in, I'm sure over his lunch or something like that. And so I saw Dr. Bay, and he confirmed the vestibular migraine diagnosis and explained everything to me. And for once, I probably sat with him for an hour, and for once I felt like a doctor really understood me. And he laid out all the medication options we could try and what to expect. And it was just like such a wonderful moment in my journey, because I felt like for the first time, A, I trusted my diagnosis, and B, I had someone to support me with it. And I really think that's why I have been able to get to 100% days. So there was a while, took me a few years, but I worked really hard at it, and I went into migraine remission. And then about 2 years ago, we decided to do IVF after a few issues that we had there. And it brought back a few more attacks, especially postpartum, like I was not sleeping. So I've had to manage it a little bit more again. But in that time, over the years, I've been able to get on meds and try different things, and eventually wean off preventative medication. So while I was in that remission state, I was not doing any preventative medication, and I've been able to stay off preventative medication, which is kind of nice, and just use devices to manage now. So it's definitely changed my life, like from when I was just totally debilitated to now. It's like night and day for me, and I feel like I got my life back. So it's kind of nice.
What do you think was the biggest game changer for you?
I think it was Dr. Bay. Honestly, having a doctor to understand what you're going through and who really takes the time to research it. And
Mhm.
he's so young and excited about helping people. It's not like he just hands you a sheet of paper and says, okay, this is what you should be doing. Like, he really tried to work with me on what I wanted. And I told him, like, look, I'm planning on having a family soon. So he's like, okay, well, let's try this route first. And
Mhm.
then this would be easier to wean off of in the long term so you can get pregnant. And I just really appreciated having a doctor to work with me. And I brought weird things to him too. Like, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about
Sure.
this diet? Could I try this? And he's never once shot me down. He's like, that's interesting. So I always think, that's interesting. He's like, okay, try it and see. I'm sure he thinks I'm nuts. But but some of these weird things have helped me, and they've helped a lot of other people too that I see on the Dizzy Cook. So
Yeah.
this kind of transformed my journey. I eventually lost my job and was kind of lost on what to do next. And I thought, well, I wish someone would have written about what I'm going through now. Like, I wish I had someone's story to read. I wish I knew what they were trying. And so kind of put it all in one place, and it worked out. Yeah.
Awesome. You kind of stepped into your purpose.
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
would have never thought I would be doing this when I was in college, but life takes you funny directions, so you just have to roll
Does.
with it sometimes.
So exciting. What would
Yeah.
you did you do like an elimination diet or anything like that?
So we started initially, diet wasn't a part of our conversation. He just was trying to get me out of that like 24/7 dizziness cycle.
Mhm.
So we started with medication, as well as supplements. So I was started with the typical supplements that you have. So magnesium, B2, CoQ10, vitamin D, and he had me on those at the recommended amounts. And then I had been doing vestibular therapy before. He wanted me to stop that, and just focus on doing little things, little goals like walking and stuff like that, rather than doing the vestibular therapy, because it's just, my brain was just firing all the time. So we were just trying to get my brain to calm down. And probably on everything we had tried, I had gotten about 50 to 60% better, but I was still having daily dizziness. And I went back to him. This was probably 6 months later. And I went back to him and I just said, look, there's got to be more, right? Like, your patients get to be 100%. And so we kind of talked through some of my options, and I didn't want to add any medications because of my plan to get pregnant. So I was asking him about a bunch of different natural options. And that's what kind of led me to research diet. And I found this book called Heal Your Headache. And so I asked him about it. He was like, it seems a little restrictive, but if you want to try it, like, and you think you can do it, go right ahead. And um, I, it's difficult. Like, the first month is really, really hard. And I'm someone who loves to cook. So I can only imagine how it must be for people who hate to cook. I mean, I see it. I talk to them now. It's really hard. You have to like overhaul your pantry basically. But um, before, I had been trying different diets like Whole30 and Paleo, and I just wasn't getting better. In fact, I felt worse on them. And it's interesting now to go through my food journals. Like, I've pulled it out to show some new people that I've worked with how I used to write it down. And I was having like yogurt every day, and I was having almonds every day, and so much almond milk. And I was, going out to Chili's and all these things that I'm like, oh, now I can see it very clearly. But at the time, it was hard to see because I thought I was eating healthy. And it turned out that I did have food triggers, but they weren't the normal food triggers that you assume. So a
Right.
lot of people tell you, don't eat chocolate, don't eat red wine. Well, chocolate, it seems to be fine for me in low amounts, but I can't, I'm one of those people who's just triggered by walnuts and almonds.
It's so interesting you say that. Almonds?
Yeah.
are a trigger for me. And I remember someone
Okay.
saying, but almonds are supposed to help migraines. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
not for
I
me.
hear that all the time. And
I
it's
do
so
too.
frustrating to me when doctors are like, oh, just eat walnuts. And I'm like, you have to give other options
Yeah,
because,
no, nope.
it's, yeah, and there are other options too. And so I get frustrated when they just suggest you eat more nuts because there are other ways to get omega-3s and all those good things. But you just kind of have to think outside the box a little bit when you have triggers like that.
Right.
So I hear nuts a lot, and I don't think that it's talked about that much, but for me on Dizzy Cook, I see so many people who have things like almonds. So it's interesting you brought that up too. Yeah, it
It's
makes me
one
feel
I
less
I
alone.
don't bring it up. People think I'm crazy when I mention it because you
Yeah.
look it up and it's supposed to help migraines. And
Yeah.
yes, no, that's one of I did the heal your headache. I did not do the six
Okay.
months elimination diet. I
Okay.
did 3 months and then slowly
Okay.
brought things back in. And for me, it was a
Yeah.
lifesaver because I really
Okay.
found those triggers.
Yeah.
And I like red wine also. But I
Yeah.
had to go through a lot of red wine to find one that I can actually drink.
Exactly. That's what I tell people. Like, you don't have to give up these things. It just takes some trial and error.
Yep.
So it's not, I think people focus a lot on the restrictions, but it's sort of more about like getting in touch with your body and realizing how you feel when you eat certain things. And I think that goes deeper than just, saying no to certain foods. You're not saying no to certain foods forever. You're just trying to figure out what works for you. It's just like trialing different medications or
Yep.
trialing different supplements.
Yes. And some
Yeah.
things you can have in small amounts, like
Yeah.
coffee. Coffee, I eliminated and I was like, oh my gosh. But I was able to bring it back. And
Yeah.
as long as I limit it, because I used to drink coffee all day, so I
Okay.
do that. And
Yeah.
no, now it's my cup. It might be a big cup, but I can do that, and it's good. You just really have to
Yeah.
figure it out. Everybody's so
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Everyone is so different. And that's why I hate, like, some people come to my group and they're like, oh, what was your biggest trigger? They think it's going to be the same for them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
don't pay attention to anyone else. Like,
Nope.
you do you, just focus on your thing and don't get caught up in everyone else's. Cause
Nope.
then,
Listen to your body.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Cause I can't touch coffee at all, but maybe can have other things that you can probably have. So,
Right.
yeah, it's just better to go at your own pace with
That's
it. That's how it helped me too. And that's really what brought me to those dizzy free days again, which was really nice, was figuring out that diet piece.
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you're counseling people now or consulting people now with vestibular issues on your
Yeah. So I have a section of my website. It's the dizzycookshop.com. And basically, I was just getting so many questions, either about my vestibular journey, who I saw, what I tried, or people were just really confused about the diagnosis, or they were just super confused about the diet. Like, what does this mean? What do I do about natural flavors? Which ones can I have? And so I saw a need to kind of help people navigate all of these things. And so I have different consultations on there where if people need a little bit more help than what you can get from my website or my book, we can talk one on one and I can give you suggestions for doctors or what to ask your physician about or what might be a good possibility to try or just kind of point you in the right direction of things. Now, I can't guide you on what you should do,
correct.
but things to ask your doctor about or to approach them or different research to bring to your doctor. So, or just meal planning, even, a lot of people struggle with overhauling their pantry and they don't know what to make or they don't know what to eat. And so trying to help them figure out what recipes would be good for them based on what
Mhm.
they like to eat. Yeah. So stuff like that.
That's awesome. I know I wish that there would have been something like that at the beginning of my journey to take
Yeah.
something to my physicians because I wasn't even able to explain my dizziness. I was just dizzy. And
Yeah.
even though I was having vertigo, the spinning vertigo and things like that. I wasn't sure how to describe that. I think a lot of doctors were put off by that. No. So having those
Yeah.
tools to go into the doctor within those questions, I think, are really important. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And just sometimes just talking to someone who's been through it and knows the system and where you should, push your doctor and where it's time to find a new doctor. I mean, it can save you a lot of time and effort and money too, because I've seen a lot of people who don't want to pay out of pocket for, a doctor over teleconference, but you keep paying copays on, to this primary care doctor who doesn't really know what they're doing, or they keep pushing you off. And I'm telling you, it was better for me to spend the out of pocket money on my neurologist than to go through all these doctors who didn't understand and go to the ER for things like meclizine. I mean, that's like $1,000 bill right there just for being
Right.
handed with like Antivert,
Yeah.
which doesn't even help anything.
No.
So
Makes you sleepy.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it sometimes helps to talk to a patient who's been through it and can help guide you like, okay, you're going to waste a lot more money here than if you just spend it here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone at the beginning of their vestibular journey you wish you would have known?
That I wish I would have known. I think that it's, I think you go into it expecting the doctor to hand you a pill and everything's going to be better. And that's not the case for pretty much everyone. I mean, it takes, and it's not like you do this one thing. People try the diet and they think they're going to feel better after a week. And then they get frustrated because they're like, I'm putting in all this effort and I'm not seeing any changes. But vestibular issues and migraine can be really, really hard to reel in once they get out of hand, especially if you're dizzy all the time and you don't really have a physician who knows what they're doing or who doesn't really understand a lot about it. And so I just wish I would have known that it was going to take longer than I expected and I would have to work harder at it. And it's not just one change, it's like you have to look at it from a holistic point of view. So you really have to come at it from all sides, from like hydration, you have to come at it from sleep, you have to manage your stress, you have to manage the anxiety portion, like maybe consider therapy. You have to look at it from diet perspective. Is there anything you can change there? Are there meds that you should be considering? Is this something that's beyond what natural treatments can do? And
Right.
and so I think being open to everything and trying new things is probably like the best thing you can do as a patient, because if you get this one tracked mind of you're just going to take a pill and it's going to be better, it's probably going to lead to a letdown, I think. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yes. When you were talking about the medication, a lot of people are terrified of meds, but you have to
Yeah.
think of it as not so much an easy fix, but as this might be temporary. The
Yeah.
medication might help with the vertigo, so you can fix everything else in your life, the mental, spiritual, everything, physical. All those
Yeah.
components work so hard together. But if one's out of sync, if your nutrition's out of sync and everything else is there, then it's still probably not going to work. It is hard
Yeah.
work, but you
Yeah.
have to look at every aspect of your life. I think I had to take a step back and look at the way I was living completely and
Yeah.
do an overhaul, clean some things off, and just really do me for once
Yeah.
instead of looking and pouring into other people at that time, because I'm a giver, and
Yeah.
I just had to start taking care of me finally.
That is such a good point. Like I feel the exact same way. Like I was just trying to do everything else and it's hard to like step back and be like, okay, I have to focus on me for a little bit.
Yeah,
Um
not easy
and
to start.
No, I was telling this. I was talking to someone last night who was having this issue with her daughter, and her daughter's super super busy. And I remembered this quote, like, if you don't take time for your health or your wellness, you have to make time for your illness. And that is so true. Like, if you don't put your health first, like, you end up, spending more time trying to fix it in the long term.
True.
And yeah, sometimes I wonder if like this would have even happened to me if I wasn't so stressed out at my job. But
I thought the
you
same
know,
thing. I was at the highest stress point in my life, and
yeah,
then I got sick, and I think that might have been the catalyst that just kind of, this is my thinking, I might be totally wrong, but it was just a
it's a
snowball
common
effect.
it's a
Yeah.
common thought. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think it's something that my neurologist sees a lot too, because he says usually there's a catalyst for like a really stressful period of time that it just sets everything off. And
especially if
gosh,
you're not listening to your body and you just keep pushing,
yes,
pushing and pushing.
yes, I
Busier,
know.
busier, busier.
I
Yeah.
guess that's a good thing, is like when the positive things come out of this is you get a lot better at recognizing like when you need to step back and take care of yourself a little bit more, huh?
Yeah. And it's crazy. I've said this before that what Meniere's disease and vestibular migraines, it kind of saved my life in a weird, twisted way, Alicia, because
Yeah.
I was just going through life, and the more the filled my calendar was, the better I felt. I was being productive. I mean, that's society here in the US. You have to
Yeah.
be busy, busy, busy,
Yeah.
and it wasn't doing anything for me. And
Yeah.
vestibular migraines and my symptoms just kind of slowed me down. And now I can really take a look back, and I appreciate so much more. And I
Oh my
know
gosh.
things. I
Yes.
am that person that pulls over on the side of the road to take a picture of the clouds. That's me.
I love that. It's such a great point too. I'm the same way. Like, I thought I was never going to be able to travel again. And so now every time we go on a trip, like, I just appreciate it so much more. The fact that like my body can even go on an airplane and fly, and it may bring up symptoms, but just, oh my gosh, that's such a huge mindset shift too, that can be very healing, as well as just to think, instead of like, I have to do this, like, I get to do this.
Right.
And how exciting that I get to do this.
Yeah.
My body can support me through this. And I think you just recognize that a little bit more.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that first plane trip. I was really fatigued, and I couldn't even walk through the airport. And here
Yeah.
I am. I look completely healthy, asking for a wheelchair assistance to the airplane because
Yeah.
I was like 3 months into my vertigo, and we were going to family, and
Uh-huh.
it was the hardest thing to do that. So I was
Yeah.
46, and I was like, this is ridiculous. No one's going to believe I'm ill, but I did it. And it was like, thank goodness I did that, push through
Yeah.
that fear. And because I was able to enjoy that. It was a little uncomfortable, but did it. So yeah,
You get over it. Yeah.
you do. You're like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm doing it. So
No, it's the same thing. Like, even now, I ask for like a certain seat on the plane, and I'm sure that they think that, I'm scamming the system or whatever. But
right.
then I pull out all my little things and start putting them on, and then I'm like, oh, maybe they get it now.
Yes. Wow. The little
But
things.
yeah, uh-huh.
I see a lot in the groups, people talking about going on vacations and flying and going on cruise ships. And I don't know if it's negativity, but just the doubt that's in the groups, that
Yeah.
and the fear that people have on doing these things with these symptoms. But man, it just comes to a point that you just can't let that fear
Oh, overwhelm your
control you.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to try it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then yeah, then
Yeah.
you're right back where you were. So
Oh, my first trip away was to Las Vegas, and I could
oh
not have picked a worse like place to go for vestibular symptoms. It was awful.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so, but what's interesting is like once I had everything calmed down, I asked Dr. Bay about vestibular therapy again. He's like, I think you're in a good place where it could benefit. And so for my next trip to Las Vegas, I worked with the vestibular therapist and she had me watch certain videos of people walking through casinos. And I did so much better the next time. And it was like a huge win for me. And
Hmm.
I don't know, it's just something about like having a good day on vacation or doing something that you were scared to do that just
Right.
makes you feel so much better about yourself and about your journey with this.
It's empowering.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah, it is empowering. So who would have ever thought like
I
a
know.
vacation would, or like,
I know. It is crazy.
It's interesting you bring up the groups too, because they can be so helpful and they can be so harmful as well, to your mental health. Especially like I remember when I was at home and you're so sick and you're scrolling through them all day long. And if that's all you're seeing, it can like I just highly recommend like logging off and because you're seeing the worst of the worst
Right.
and the people who are really miserable. And a lot of them, um, either they don't have good access to care or they don't want to be have that access, even if it's offered to them. I've offered to help several people in groups and they just shut me down all the time. I offer to help them, with meal planning and everything. And they're just like, no, I just don't want to eat water. And I'm like, well, there's lots you can eat. It's not just
Yeah.
water, but
No.
some people are just very resistant to it. And so you just have to realize like, there are some people who are very passionate and want to be on that healing journey. And there are other people who are just dealing with something else and you've just got to let them deal with it.
Yep. It's such a,
Yeah.
there's work behind this,
Yeah.
behind the healing.
Yeah.
And um,
Resources, it may take investing a little
yeah,
bit more into
absolutely.
things. Like I said about the doctors, if you're not getting anywhere, you may have to pay out of pocket, but that one out of pocket will save you so much money in the long run. But so I try to explain that to people, but they just see the cost and, it's too
Mm.
much for them to get over. And I, all you can do is like set people up with the tools, but at some point you can't be everyone's
They
therapist.
got to work it. No,
It's
I have,
hard as
it
a
is.
vestibular, you want to help so
Mhm.
badly. And yeah, that's gonna be a challenge.
I find when we started feeling better, I became sick in 2016 as well. And
Yeah.
I was in a lot of the groups then, but I've noticed that I've pulled back. I don't post as much in the groups, and I really should be posting more inspirational things in those groups to give
Mhm.
more hope. But that's the thing that when you do scroll through, you do see a lot of the darkness. And I've told a couple people that are new to this journey that once you start having those physical reactions to all the darkness in those groups, you got to pull out, take a break,
Yeah.
get off social media.
Yeah. hmm I think what's even better, than the Facebook group sometimes is like there's some online support groups. Like I know Vita does a few. They have a few online groups that meet, and then Miles for Migraine also has some
Oh,
that
do
are
they?
really good. Yeah, they have a few that are open. I think there's like one that's closed, but they try to limit them to a certain amount of people, and they're all online. And I think that's
That's
almost a
nice.
better way to
Yeah.
go because then you can connect to people in person and you also have a moderator in there who can help with like any false information because I
Right.
see a lot of false information that also floats around those groups and
Right.
at some point you just get tired of responding to it or like you know letting people know because it's yeah you kind of get burned out on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I get that completely. I mean, we want to help, want to,
Yeah.
give that encouragement, but we can't do it for them.
Good point because all you see are the people who are at their worst, but like
Yeah.
people who are feeling better are burnt out on, being in those groups too. So you're not going to get those positive stories like you might just following us individually
Right.
or being in one of these support groups, you know?
Yep. I love that the Zoom meetings or the support groups online. Have you
Yeah,
done
yeah.
Miles for Mike? I'm going to include that in the show notes. That's wonderful.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there's a really good one. Katie Moran, if anyone can get in her group, she's so sweet, and they lead a really good group. I think the one they have on Wednesday nights is full, but they might have like others on other nights that are open. So
Awesome. And that's
um,
on Miles for Migraine?
yeah, it's on Miles
Okay.
for Migraine, and then they have like like social series too. So like we just did one where I did a cooking class, and everyone kind of gets on, and we make something all together, and then I'll do cooking classes occasionally too that I'll put on the dizzycookshop.com, and it's just a fun way to like meet other people
That's really
online and
cool.
yeah, and do something fun for yourself with other
Yeah.
people who are in your situation. Yeah.
I started listening to the Life Rebalance docuseries, the
Okay.
Chronicles docuseries on the way to work. And I have an hour
Yeah.
commute. I had to
Okay.
turn it off. I was bawling. But it's so great. It is so
It's
great, all
really
of what you guys
good.
have done with that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Kimberly, who put it together, she's at Unfixed and she is just super talented and just she was so supportive of us and just had this way of like creating a really safe space for it. And I think she pulled out some like really beautiful moments out of it. And
Really did.
yeah, I wish more people would have seen it. Like I honestly wish other migraine websites would have picked it up or someone with a bigger audience
Yeah,
because I feel like not everyone got to see it or took the time to listen to it and it's a really amazing
it really
product.
is. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. And how she put it all together is just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Beautiful.
It
Beautiful.
is.
Stunning. Yeah.
It
Yeah. She
really
did a
is.
wonderful job. So
She is very
thank you
talented.
for watching it and for sharing that.
No,
I
no.
really,
People need to hear it. And I think
yeah.
it would benefit those people with family and friends that don't understand what we're going through. It's huge,
Yes. Yes.
huge. Because there's a lot of people that don't have that support that you and I are lucky to have
Yeah.
through this. And
That's a really good point, actually. I think I keep going back to my meeting last night, but the mom was just, she's used to her daughter like being super active and was trying to push her to do all these things. And I was trying to explain, like, look, it's just not the same. Like you're not the same person. It's terrifying to be like they were going to go skiing and I said honestly to like be out on a bunch of ice and everything with this would be terrifying to me and so like trying to get them to understand that each other a little bit better especially probably when you're a younger kid and you don't really know how to speak to your mom to get her you don't know when your kid's being dramatic or like
right.
how to connect in that way and so I can see that. And I see it a lot too with relationships as well. Like it took Casey and I some time to communicate and figure out um him to understand like, okay, this is how I'm feeling inside of my head. Like
Mhm.
my parents didn't even understand it until I wrote my cookbook. Like they were like, wow, Alicia, we had no idea you were dealing with. I'm like, how did you not know? Like I lost my
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
But sometimes writing it out is the way you're feeling. And I don't know, how did you communicate this to your family? It's hard.
It
It
is
takes
hard.
time.
My parents didn't understand it either. And they got me permission to use their church for the first support group I was trying to put together down here years ago.
Okay.
The only person that showed was my father. He signed in
Oh.
and he said, I want to know more about this. I'm going to cry. But,
Oh. Oh
and
my gosh.
and I took that moment to teach him about what I was going through. He had no idea. And
Oh. That is like, oh my gosh, that made me cry.
but it's amazing that they don't know. And if we don't have those conversations, that's why I think the Life Rebalance Chronicle series is fantastic. We just got to get it in the right hands. And I great with it, what you guys have done with that.
Yeah, thank you. That's really nice to know.
All right, let me wipe my face.
That's really sweet because I feel like there's always like that kind of breakthrough moment. Like, I think when my mom finally said like, well, I'm so glad, or I can't remember if it was my mom or my dad, but when they were just like, oh, Alicia, I had no idea, like, until I read your book. And a lot of our friends said the same thing. Like, I had no idea, and just them acknowledging it was huge for me.
Yeah.
It just made me feel like, oh, I'm like seen for the first time.
I know.
That was like everything.
I know. I can just imagine. I know one of the greatest gifts I had was when a friend texted me and said, I had no idea what you were going through. I have been researching Meniere's, and how do you do this? And it was just a conversation I wish I could have with more people, that, because it's not just dizziness, it's everything.
Right.
It's sound and visual, and it's, your whole life is turned upside down.
And then all the work that you have to put in to feel better, it's like going back to what we said about just not being an easy fix, no one sees all the behind the scenes of us trying different diets or trying different meds or going to therapy, or, it takes a lot of time and effort.
It really does.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm crying here. Alicia, this has been such a great conversation. I hope you're looking forward to part 2 as much as I am. I simply can't get enough of her. When you have a conversation with a friend and you feel heard and understood, that you aren't alone, this conversation, this is how I feel. Seen, heard, and, just understood in this journey. I would love to know if you feel the same way. Please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram or by emailing me at maniersmuse@gmail.com. You can find Alicia's book at our website that directly supports her at thedizzycookshop.com. Catch us next week for part 2 of Alicia Wolf, the Dizzy Cook. But before I go, did you know that May 15th through the 21st is Vita's campaign for Steps to Balance? If you would do our vestibular community a huge favor and share something on social media or locally with a friend or family member about vestibular disorders, it would be greatly appreciated. If you're uncertain what to share, please feel free to visit Vita's website at vestibular.org or direct message me. I'll help you out. Making a donation would also be awesome. Please find the link in the show notes for my fundraising page. Don't forget to tag me, Meniere's Muse, if you post anything on social media, so I can see how you're helping spread awareness about vestibular disorders. Thank you so much for your support, and if spreading awareness helps just one bestie feel less alone, it's so worth the effort. Have an amazing week, warriors.